18 months prior, I sensed unease when Brooke suggested our weekly dinner at her parents' home became a necessity, despite our 7-year marriage history. Sundays with Raymond and Denise were often postponed or avoided by Brooke, who rolled her eyes during their calls and found excuses. However, recently, she insisted we attend every week, claiming her parents were growing older and she felt remorse for our infrequent visits. This behavior was unusual for Brooke, as guilt was foreign to her. This account begins not with the dinner, but rather the withdrawals I observed 18 months ago when I was a 34-year-old owner of a thriving HVAC company that grew from a single service van into a fleet of 12 trucks and 31 employees, known as Owen then. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and in our Midwestern region, such work that ensures warmth in winter and coolness in summer fosters a lasting reputation. Brooke and I crossed paths at a friend's wedding when we were both 25. She was managing an office for a real estate firm, shrewd and driven, exuding confidence that made you feel like the center of attention whenever she paid attention to you. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, and tied the knot in a ceremony largely financed by her parents, something I felt uneasy about, but Brooke insisted it was just the way her family did things. I should have heeded that warning more closely. The phrase, the way her family did things, shed light on much of what followed later. For the initial 4 years, things were satisfactory. Not flawless, we had our fair share of disagreements about the common issues like money, time, and holiday plans, but overall good. I was expanding the business, putting in 60-hour workweeks. Supporting my project with pride, I believed Brooke was on board. However, I found out later this might not have been the case. She brought me dinner at work when I stayed late and managed our household finances since I was swamped. Trusting her implicitly, granting her access to everything, was my first error. The lack of restriction, not the trust itself, proved to be problematic. The discrepancies began with small withdrawals from our joint account, always coming from this source. I dismissed these at first in early 2022, attributing them to unmentioned household expenses. With a comfortable income and around $200,000 coming in from the business annually, I did not feel the need to probe further. However, as time passed, the amounts escalated to thousands, with a notable $4,000 withdrawal in March of that year. When I questioned Brooke about this significant withdrawal, she replied calmly, "For car repairs." Once more, the transmission produced that bothersome grinding sound, prompting me to visit the auto shop Caroline suggested, my sister, who'd recommended it to her friend months ago. The rationale was plausible, so I let it be. 2 months later, another $3,000 expense surfaced, this time a bathroom renovation estimate we had discussed. Brooke mentioned it. Despite not recalling the decision to hire anyone, the conversation took place and the logic matched. A skillful liar doesn't concoct stories out of thin air. Instead, they intertwine their lies with actual conversations, real events, and plans as if they were threads in a fabric. By the time you attempt to unravel any single thread, it's difficult to distinguish which ones sustain the whole structure. Come 2022 end, almost $40,000 had left our joint savings. After tallying everything up, a chill settled within me. "Brooke," I said that night, maintaining my voice as calmly as possible, "could you clarify where the savings account funds have been spent? The statements show significantly more outflow than anticipated." She looked up from her phone with an expression now familiar to me, feigned concern. "What do you mean?" I questioned. "I mean nearly $40,000 has been withdrawn from savings this year. The unstarted bathroom renovation doesn't account for it." "Owen," she responded, setting her phone aside and joining me, placing a hand on my arm. "Am I being accused of something?" I was seeking clarification, not accusations. "You're questioning me as if I were under suspicion." Her eyes glistened, another tactic I later learned. "I've been managing our finances for years while you focus on your business. I've never once complained, and now you're grilling me like I'm embezzling from you." "I didn't allege embezzlement. I asked about the money spent on maintaining our life while you work excessively." She stood up, arms folded. "Rent, cars, insurance, your business events I have to accompany and fake a smile for. Do you need receipts for every minor expense I make? Brooke, it costs approximately $40,000 to be your wife, Owen. Perhaps you should reconsider that." She left the room. I remained seated with the bank statements in my hand, feeling as if I was the one who had made a mistake. That's how skillful she was. "I want to clarify something. Initially, I didn't suspect anything wrong. Brooke's reaction embarrassed me so much that I put the matter aside for weeks. When I raised it again more tactfully, she presented a spreadsheet. It listed expenses that I only vaguely remembered discussing. House repairs, car maintenance, medical bills, gifts for family members, a weekend trip to visit her college friend which I apparently agreed to fund as an anniversary gift. Examining that spreadsheet now, I can see discrepancies, figures not aligning, costs assigned to non-existent vendors or services never provided. At first, I chose to believe her. I wanted my marriage to remain what I thought it was. The wish to believe extended my blindness for another 11 months and cost me an additional $60,000. What ultimately shattered my willful ignorance wasn't financial suspicion, but a conversation I unwittingly overheard. In January of the previous year, I returned home early from a job site. A pipe had burst at a commercial property and my team handled it efficiently. They didn't require my supervision. Upon entering the garage and kitchen, I heard Brooke on the phone in the living room. "Not yet," she was saying. "He's starting to scrutinize the accounts. I need another few months at least." I stood still, my hand frozen on the refrigerator door. "Neil, please listen. I understand the situation," she said, emphasizing that property transfers require time. A brief interruption occurred when you entered the living room. She might have heard something or simply sensed your presence. The conversation paused, and 30 seconds later, she was engrossed in Instagram. "Hi, you're back early, all good at the Henderson property?" she asked casually upon noticing your return. A pipe had burst and the crew was managing it. She displayed no reaction to the news, maintaining a serene expression. "Who were you speaking with earlier?" she inquired. "Just my mother," you replied, expressing concern about her constant worries regarding your father's cholesterol levels. "She can be quite dramatic at times," she added nonchalantly. Brooke invited you to sit beside her and listen to her day's events. You shared details of your day without mentioning the conversation you overheard earlier. The name Neil remained unfamiliar to you at that moment. For 2 weeks, I delved into Brooke's routines, scrutinizing her comings and goings, gym visits, and phone usage. I had never heard of a Neil, yet I searched my memory for any connections to the name, coworkers, friends, or distant relatives. One evening on Tuesday, I discovered evidence that seemed to validate my suspicions. At 6:30, Brooke said she was going to yoga and would return in a couple of hours. At 7:15, I drove past the supposed yoga studio, but her car wasn't there. I rationalized it as just clearing my mind by taking a different route, not tailing anyone. 20 minutes afterwards, her car was parked outside an unfamiliar restaurant in a seldom-visited district of town. I found a spot on the opposite street to wait. At 8:45 p.m., Brooke emerged from the restaurant accompanied by an unfamiliar man, smartly dressed in pricey casual attire that subtly conveyed wealth. They conversed near her vehicle, with Brooke leaning against it and the man leaning in. After a few minutes of seemingly intimate dialogue, he leaned in to kiss her, not a casual peck or goodbye, but a lingering, familiar one, as if they had shared many such moments before. Sitting in my truck, I witnessed the demise of my marriage through a fogged windshield caused by my breath. It was then that most people in similar circumstances might have erred, choosing to confront Brooke on that night. However, I remained still. For 45 minutes after she left, I contemplated expressing my rage through storming into the restaurant, racing across the parking lot, or angrily texting for explanations, but I stayed in my vehicle instead. My hands cramped as I clutched the steering wheel. Eventually, I went home and slept before she returned. When Brooke joined me in bed that night, her scent of shower soap masking other activities, I feigned slumber. She settled down contentedly. In the dark, I devised a strategy. The first step was to contact Audrey Kim, a lawyer well known for managing complex divorce cases involving concealed assets and financial deceit in our region. Her fee was steep, but I paid it without question. At our initial encounter, she requested all details: the withdrawals, the secret phone call, the mention of Neil, the unexpected parking lot kiss. Audrey remained silent throughout my narration. Upon conclusion, she leaned back in her seat and asked me, "What's your intent, Owen?" Her desire was for truth and self-preservation. Good news for her, she noted that it wasn't revenge she sought but protection. She wants to safeguard her business, wealth, and reputation. Whatever activities she suspects, she doesn't want to bear the consequences. Better still, Audrey responded when I mentioned the word revenge. Protection is practical, she can align with that. She outlined our requirements, detailed records of any questionable transactions, proof of the affair, and most crucially, a comprehensive understanding of the money trail. She suggested hiring a forensic accountant and a private investigator, both professionals with whom she's collaborated before. This endeavor will come at a price, she cautioned me. Based on your business income details and what seems to have been lost, I consider the expenditure worthwhile. I gave her permission to continue, but those subsequent 6 weeks were some of my toughest times. I lived with Brooke as usual, going to work, returning home, having dinner together, discussing our days, watching TV together, and sleeping in the same bed. Meanwhile, a forensic accountant was uncovering money flows I wasn't aware of. A private investigator was recording meetings between my wife and Neil Forrester. That's his full name. Even capturing photos of them entering and leaving the same hotel on 4 different occasions. Meanwhile, my attorney was examining property records and discovered something that chilled me to the core. "Owen," Audrey said one Thursday afternoon in early March, "how much do you know about the property at 1847 Westbrook Lane?" I had never heard of it before. "You're listed as a co-owner of a single-family home, with your wife's father, Raymond Mitchell, being the other owner." I sank into my office chair after hearing this, inquired about the type of property. It was purchased 14 months ago for $360,000. The down payment appears to have originated from an account I'm still investigating, but given the amounts and timing, it seems to stem from our shared savings. Your wife has bought a house with her father, utilizing funds that seem to be ours, technically correct, but essentially yes. Audrey hesitated before continuing. There's more. The mortgage payments for this property have been made from an account in your wife's name which you were unaware of. This account receives recurring transfers, and I suspect they originate from our joint account, specifically the business operating account, with smaller amounts strategically structured to evade detection. The person who set this up seemed knowledgeable. I mulled over Raymond Mitchell's background as a retired banker with 35 years of experience at a regional financial institution. A man well-versed in the intricacies of money flow and how to move it discreetly. My father-in-law assisted my wife in establishing this, I noted. This is my interpretation. I expressed gratitude towards Audrey and concluded the conversation. Later, I spent a considerable amount of time alone in my office, reflecting on Sunday dinners at the Mitchell household and aspects I had previously overlooked. The house located at 1847 Westbrook Lane was a rental property, bringing in $1,800 monthly income. This revenue was directed towards an account that I was unaware of. Similarly, this same account covered the mortgage payments and amassed a balance of approximately $40,000 by the time we became aware of it. My father-in-law didn't merely aid my wife in concealing funds. He helped her expand an investment property portfolio, using resources from my marriage and business. The Westbrook Lane house was their initial step. They had been preparing to acquire Moore and Neil Forrester. The man kissing my wife in parking lots and encountering her at hotels. He was a real estate agent. Not just any real estate agent, but one who worked for the same firm where Brooke served as an office manager when we first met. For several years, they were co-workers. However, for the past 18 months, their relationship transcended professional boundaries. Neil was an expert in investment properties, handling deal sourcing, return analysis, and purchase structuring for clients developing rental portfolios. As per the investigators' findings, Neil and Brooke were discussing a 5-property scheme, fully funded within 3 years. This funding, unbeknownst to me, was intended. The affair, while troubling, paled in comparison to the calculated deceit. What stung deeply was the strategy, the long-term plan to drain my wealth and construct an enterprise without me, carried out by Brooke, her lover, and her father in harmonious collusion. Audrey's forensic accountant prepared a 93-page report detailing every questionable transaction, revealing hidden accounts, and estimating the total embezzled funds at approximately $140,000 over nearly 2 years. The detective's folder contained timestamped photos, hotel records, and a troubling collection of text messages retrieved from a cloud backup, forgotten by Brooke. In these messages, she conversed with Neil about their departure plan, speculated on the potential divorce settlement amount, and expressed frustration at needing to maintain the charade with me for a few more months. One message in particular caught my attention, written to Neil on Valentine's Day, 4 weeks prior to my discovery of the kiss. He had sent her roses. Incredulous, she wondered how he could still believe we were happy. Another year, she mused, and they would secure their 4th property. Then she was done with the deception. I reread that message 3 times before putting down the folder and dialing Audrey. I requested a similar file. By Monday, the documents would be ready. However, we needed to discuss the timing. What were your thoughts on it? You possess the evidence, you have the proof. But for now, she remains unaware of any of this. As soon as you initiate the divorce, She and her father will begin safeguarding themselves by moving funds, concealing assets, and fabricating explanations for their actions. To confront this effectively, I advise comprehensive preparation. This includes drafting not only divorce documents, but also filing a civil suit against your father-in-law for conspiracy to defraud. We should gather evidence in the form of court packages detailing their activities. Additionally, the timing of disclosure must be carefully considered. The reason is that this isn't just a divorce between you and your wife, Owen. It uncovers a complex fraud scheme involving her family. You wouldn't want to engage in such a battle without proper preparation. I pondered over the weekly Sunday dinners, Brooke's unexpected insistence on attending them, and Raymond's gaze at me during these meals. His friendly demeanor, handshakes, and inquiries about the business all seemed suspicious. I concluded that she was plotting something, which explains the family gatherings and her urge for us to attend regularly. She intends to make a move. My conjecture aligns with yours. The query revolves around deciding whether to retaliate or initiate first. In case of the latter, what would that entail? After a brief pause, Audrey mused it would mean being present during her execution of whatever she's planning, armed with all our collected data prepared for a reaction. The date for the Sunday dinner where things came to an end was April 6th. Brooke has been adamant about this specific date, a significant date. She mentioned it was her parents' anniversary, marking 40 years of marriage. It was crucial that we were there. I observed that she had been edgy all week, frequently checking her phone and engaging in hushed discussions elsewhere. She hardly slept the night prior while I enjoyed a restful slumber. The manila envelope is in my car. Within it lay the forensic accountant's conclusions, images of Brooke kneeling, copies of incriminating text messages, real estate records for 1847 Westbrook Lane, Audrey's civil lawsuit naming both Brooke and Raymond as defendants in a fraud case, and a petition for divorce I had filed on the previous Friday. Despite being served that day, Brooke hadn't mentioned the papers. I presumed she intended to discuss it later, unaware of the additional details. Raymond and Denise Mitchell resided in a spacious ranch house they'd purchased and renovated twice, 4 decades ago. The kitchen led to a formal dining room, which in turn opened to a living room centered around a fireplace. Photographs adorned every surface, with Brooke featured prominently as the only child, lavished with affection and spoiled since birth. For 9 years, I had frequented this house. I was aware of where the glasses were stored, Raymond's preferred chair and Denise's roast preference. I understood the regularity of meals here, the flow of discussions, how Raymond eventually guided topics towards business or investments, or the economy's impact on everyone. That night, for the first time, I entered with a clarity in my eyes. "Owen," Denise greeted me warmly, "it's wonderful to see you. Brooke mentioned that you've been working tirelessly as of late. Business is bustling." I responded with a smile. "Thank you for your hospitality." Raymond shook my hand firmly. 40 years, can you believe it? Denise and I were mere adolescents when we began. Congratulations on this significant milestone, the key to success. It's partnership, Raymond patted my shoulder. Discovering someone with whom you can construct, someone you trust implicitly. I continued smiling. I seem to be learning a great deal about trust recently. A fleeting emotion crossed Raymond's face momentarily before his politician's smile resurfaced. Indeed, let's dig in. Denise has truly pulled out all the stops tonight. The conversation at dinner seemed unusually formal, with Denise discussing her dreams of future grandchildren and Raymond discussing golf and his work with a local business mentorship program. Brooke scarcely touched her food and frequently glanced at her father, while I continued eating quietly. The atmosphere in the room was tense, as everyone appeared to be waiting for something following dessert. Raymond cleared his throat and placed his napkin down. "Owen, Brooke, there's a matter we'd like to discuss with both of you tonight," I anticipated. "Given that Denise and I are not getting any younger," Raymond began, "we have been contemplating the future, including estate planning and asset distribution." His tone was deliberate and rehearsed. "We've decided we would like to assist you two in achieving your goals while we can still witness it." Brooke nodded gravely, never looking away from me. "We've established some investment properties," Raymond continued. "We've chosen rental properties for income growth and value increase. Our intention is to equally transfer the ownership of these properties to you and yourself as a premature inheritance," Raymond explained, smiling at me. "There are some legal requirements, such as signing documents and altering how certain accounts are managed," he added. "My lawyers have prepared everything. It would require adjusting some of your business assets, Owen, to maximize tax benefits, but I believe the advantages outweigh any inconvenience," he clarified. I realized then. This wasn't a generous gesture, but a scheme. They wanted me to sign documents that would intermingle my business assets with their property ventures. They sought my signature on the restructuring. These papers would complicate unraveling their fraud. They aimed for my cooperation in my own embezzlement. I responded composedly. That's extremely kind of you, Raymond. May I review the documents? Certainly. Raymond stood up and moved towards a nearby table where a folder was situated. He returned with it, presenting it to me. Take your time, he mentioned. I'm confident that Brooke can clarify anything that might be unclear. Finally, Brooke met my gaze. Her neutral expression belied the tension in her jaw and the slight tremor in her hands as she reached for her water glass. I leafed through the folder, glancing at the initial page, then the second, then the third. They were precisely what I'd anticipated: asset restructuring agreements, property transfer documents, a new joint account authorization that would provide Brooke and Raymond access to my business funds. This is quite comprehensive, I remarked. Our lawyers are indeed skilled. Raymond settled back, now more relaxed. So what's your take? I shut the folder. Before I put my signature on anything, I believe it's important for everyone here to be aware of what I discovered at 1847 Westbrook Lane, I stated. The room fell silent. Raymond didn't betray any emotion, but his hands paused mid-action. Brooke halted halfway with her water glass. Denise appeared puzzled. I don't quite follow, dear, Denise queried softly. It appears you may not be fully informed about your husband and daughter's activities over the past 2 years, I explained. In my opinion, it's high time we were all on the same wavelength. I got up, went to the front door where I had left my coat, retrieved the manila envelope from its inner pocket, and returned to the table. Owen, Brooke's voice was tense. What is this? These are the divorce papers I filed on Friday, I replied. You received your copy at work this morning. I assume you intended to bring up this matter later tonight, in a manner of your choosing, after I had signed your father's documents. Brooke paled. More significantly, I went on, this envelope encloses evidence of the $140,000 you embezzled from our accounts over the past 2 years. Property records for the rental house bought with my funds using your father's name. Photos and messages proving your affair with Neil Forrester, as well as plans to drain my assets until you owned enough properties to leave me. I placed the civil complaint in front of Raymond. Additionally, it includes a civil fraud lawsuit implicating both you and your daughter. It has been filed and you'll be served on Monday. Raymond gazed at the document, his face paling. This is preposterous, he muttered, yet his voice lacked conviction. These charges are groundless. My lawyers will deal with your lawyers and their reading material. I displayed the forensic accountant's report on top of the stack. These records detail each transfer, secret account, and structured withdrawal meant to evade reporting limits. Your banking knowledge proved invaluable in devising this plan, Raymond. It will be equally useful for the forensic accountant in clarifying the scheme to a judge. Denise looked pale. Raymond, what is he discussing? Denise, my dear, this is all a misunderstanding. Brooke's tone was emotionless. She was fixed on the stack of documents as if they were poisonous. How did you discover it? I learned because I started to pay attention. I looked at my wife, the woman I shared a bed with for 7 years, who kissed me goodbye every morning and told me she loved me 1,000 times. I found out because finally I began to heed what my instincts were saying rather than what you wished me to believe. Owen, I can clarify. You can clarify things to the judge. You may clarify the matter to your lawyer. However, remember that Neil, likewise implicated in the civil suit as an accomplice, is not the one you should be confiding in. You shouldn't share information in a manner that alters the current situation. As I was leaving, Brooke stood up. The calm facade she had maintained until then crumbled entirely. She pleaded with me to discuss this matter further, suggesting possibilities of reconciliation and compromise dating back to when you decided to embezzle from her 2 years ago and when you started a relationship with Neil a year ago. She hinted that honesty could have prevented all this turmoil. I turned to face her again. You didn't opt for sincerity then, you chose this path. Now you must deal with the consequences. You can't simply. I have, it's over. Raymond remained unmoved in his seat. You're correct, your daughter excelled from an exceptional mentor, but both of you overlooked a critical aspect. What exactly was it? Raymond barely spoke. I constructed my business from scratch. I learned to anticipate problems and take precautions. I learned the importance of documentation. I opened the front door. I realized that trust is precious because it can be shattered. I stepped out into the cool evening air. In the background, I heard Denise's voice, anxious and perplexed. Raymond seemed to be saying something crucial in a low tone. Brooke called my name. I continued walking. The divorce was finalized 4 months later, followed by an out-of-court settlement of a civil suit 2 months afterward. Here's what Brooke received: her name on a rental property now burdened with legal fees, a judgment against her for the return of $63,000 misused marital funds, and a tarnished reputation in our community that would haunt her for years. Raymond received a fraud judgment against him, a disciplinary referral due to concealed transactions using professional knowledge, and a strained marriage as Denise questioned their 40-year union. Neil was implicated in a lawsuit, his role detailed in court records visible to anyone searching, and his real estate career declined as news of his client fraud involvement spread, leading to its slow decay. As for me, my business remains unscathed, my assets secure, and my name exonerated. I retained the house. Brooke resides with her parents, apparently causing tension. My retirement funds were returned, albeit with some prior expenditures. What I truly acquired was self-respect. Despite occasional inquiries about second thoughts regarding the outcome, its value far surpasses all else. If only I had addressed Brooke sooner, discussed our issues privately, allowing her an opportunity to explain, apologize, or amend her actions, I do not rue that decision. For 2 long years, she's looked me in the eye every morning, choosing deception, involved her father in a plot to pilfer my future, and carried on with another man while scheming to take what I had labored to construct. She did not merit a quiet discussion. She deserved what she received, the truth exposed before those she depended upon for her deceit. I often recall that dinner, Raymond's face paling, Denise's bewilderment transforming into shock, Brooke's facade crumbling as she grasped the disintegration of her false edifice built on my oblivion. It was not gratifying in the way revenge is supposed to be. There was no triumph in it. These were people I cherished, individuals I trusted, companions I envisioned aging with. Witnessing their unmasking for their actions seemed crucial, akin to draining an abscess. Although painful, it was the path required. Half a year post-divorce, I encountered Caroline at a cafe. My sister had maintained impartiality throughout, as she and Brooke were close and she'd found it difficult to comprehend what transpired. "I owe you an apology," she admitted. "For what?" I queried. "The time when you began inquiring about the money and I told you that you were being overly cautious, that Brooke wouldn't engage in such behavior." Caroline glanced at her coffee. "I was wrong. I should have stood by your side. You couldn't have known." "Yes, but I should have listened," I responded. "She met my gaze. You put trust in her. We all did. That's not your fault." "I know, and I did know eventually." It took months of counseling and introspection to stop self-blaming for not spotting the signs sooner. Initially, the signs were intended to remain unseen, a design conceived by those adept at manipulating trust and targeting victims. Yet, it was I who ultimately exposed and terminated this scheme on my own terms. A year following our dinner at the Mitchell house, I found myself rebuilding my life. My business was thriving more than ever before due to the absence of the financial burden. With the newfound freedom, I invested in advanced equipment and employed additional technicians, which led us to venture into commercial HVAC services for the first time. I tentatively dipped my toes back into dating with professional guidance on processing the past and preventing a repetition. The therapist I consulted helped me recognize that Brooke's actions didn't reflect on my personal value, but rather her own character flaws. Gradually, I began mending fences with Denise. 6 months after our divorce, she reached out, distraught and remorseful. Denise was unaware of Raymond and Brooke's true activities. She assumed the properties were legitimate investments sourced from Raymond's retirement funds. However, when the truth surfaced, it nearly destroyed her marriage. "I don't expect you to forgive her or him," Denise confided over coffee. "What they did was unforgivable, but I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me for not recognizing it." I replied that there was nothing to forgive. She too had been deceived, just in different ways. The last time I encountered Brooke was in a courthouse hallway, following a hearing concerning the settlement payments. She missed her appearance, looking drained and older. The woman who had captivated my attention at that wedding 9 years prior had vanished, replaced by someone visibly affected by the repercussions of her decisions. She halted when she saw me. For a brief instant, I believed she might speak, perhaps apologize or clarify, but instead she merely fixed me with an enigmatic gaze. As she walked by without a word, I chose not to follow her departure, and if there's a lesson in this experience, it's not about mistrusting people. Instead, trust is essential. It serves as the foundation for relationships, businesses, and communities. Without it, we have nothing. The lesson here is to remain vigilant. Trust but verify, love yet stay aware. If something seems amiss, if the calculations don't align, if the stories don't quite fit, or when your inner voice whispers that something isn't right, don't suppress that intuition because it's inconvenient. I suppressed mine for nearly 2 years, and it cost me $140,000 and a marriage I believed would endure forever. However, I found my voice again. I used it at the dining table in front of those who thought they outsmarted me, and that's the part I will carry forward. Not the betrayal, not the money, not even justice, but the awareness that when it counted most, I trusted myself. That's worth everything.